The abandoned house looked like it had already lost its battle with time. Half the roof had collapsed. Several windows were boarded shut. Wild vines climbed through broken brickwork. The front porch sagged so badly that every step groaned beneath its own weight. Neighbors called it the cursed house on Willow Street. No one wanted it. 23-year-old Lucas Bennett bought it anyway. Not because he believed it held treasure. Because it was the only roof he could still afford. Only a month earlier, Lucas thought he would inherit the family farm where he had worked beside his grandfather since childhood. Instead, he stood silently in a lawyer's office while his relatives divided everything. His grandfather had died unexpectedly. Without warning, old resentments surfaced. His uncles hired expensive attorneys. Technicalities buried Lucas beneath legal paperwork. The farmhouse, the machinery, the livestock, the land, everything went to other relatives. Lucas received nothing. Not even the small workshop where he and Grandpa Charles had restored old furniture together. His aunt looked uncomfortable as everyone prepared to leave. "I'm sorry, Lucas." "So am I." Those were the final words spoken before the family scattered. 3 weeks later, the landlord rented Lucas's apartment to someone else after he missed 2 payments. By sunset, everything he owned fit inside an aging pickup truck. A duffel bag, a toolbox, family photographs, and Grandpa Charles's old folding carpenter's rule. It was the only item Grandpa had personally given him before he died. Lucas carried it everywhere. As a boy, Grandpa repeated one lesson almost every weekend. Never trust fresh paint. Lucas would laugh. Why? Because old houses tell the truth beneath the surface. At the time, it sounded like another one of Grandpa's strange sayings. Now those words returned unexpectedly. While searching county property listings at the public library, Lucas noticed one abandoned house scheduled for demolition. Minimum bid, $6,000. No competing buyers. Everyone avoided it because engineers declared restoration financially impossible. Lucas studied the listing carefully. Something seemed strange. The original construction date listed 1912, but one renovation permit from 1948 described extensive interior masonry work. Brick walls inside a wooden house. That didn't make much sense. Still, the price fit his remaining savings almost exactly. 3 days later, the house officially belonged to him. Neighbors watched from across the street as he unlocked the front door. One elderly woman smiled sympathetically. "You planning to tear it down?" Lucas shook his head. "I'm planning to fix it." She laughed gently. So did the last 3 owners. Inside, the damage looked even worse. Collapsed ceilings, broken flooring, water stains covered nearly every room. Yet beneath the destruction, beautiful craftsmanship remained. Solid oak beams, hand-carved stair railings, original stone fireplace. Someone had once loved this house. Lucas spent the next 2 weeks cleaning, removing rotten drywall, repairing roof leaks, salvaging reusable lumber. Every evening he slept inside a small camping cot near the fireplace. Slowly, the house began feeling alive again. One afternoon, while removing damaged plaster inside the dining room, Lucas uncovered something unusual. A perfectly constructed brick wall. Not an exterior wall, an interior one. Bright red bricks stood in sharp contrast to the surrounding timber framing. It looked almost intentional. He measured the room. The dimensions didn't match the exterior of the house. Nearly 5 feet had disappeared. A hidden space existed beyond the brick wall. Excitement replaced exhaustion. Lucas searched carefully. Nothing. No doorway. No handle. No loose bricks. The wall appeared solid. That evening he unfolded Grandpa's old carpenter's rule while measuring the bricks. One brass hinge near the center felt unusually stiff. Curious, he cleaned away decades of dirt. Hidden beneath the grime appeared tiny engraved letters. CB, Grandpa Charles Bennett. Lucas frowned. Impossible. Grandpa had never owned this house. Had he? He unfolded the carpenter's rule completely. Something rattled inside. The brass and cap unscrewed. A tiny steel key slid into his hand, along with a tightly folded note. The wall isn't hiding treasure. It's protecting a promise. Lucas stared silently. His grandfather had hidden the key inside the carpenter's rule decades earlier. He hurried back to the brick wall. Near the engraved initials sat a nearly invisible keyhole between 2 bricks. The tiny steel key fit perfectly. A soft metallic click echoed inside the wall. Ancient gears slowly engaged. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Then, With surprising precision, the entire brick wall silently rolled sideways along concealed tracks. Cool air escaped from the darkness beyond. Lucas stepped forward carefully. Behind the wall stood a beautifully preserved hidden room. Shelves lined every wall. Leather journals, blueprint tubes, wooden document cases, antique drafting tables. Everything remained untouched. At the center rested a massive oak desk. One envelope lay neatly on top. Across the front, in Grandpa Charles's unmistakable handwriting, appeared 5 simple words. Only after you lose everything. Lucas carefully picked up the envelope. His hands trembled. Because suddenly the ruined house everyone believed was beyond saving wasn't simply another abandoned property anymore. It had become the final chapter of a mystery Grandpa Charles had begun long before anyone in the family ever fought over the estate. And whatever waited inside that envelope was important enough for Grandpa to hide until Lucas had absolutely nothing left except the determination to build a new beginning. Lucas carefully opened the envelope. Inside rested a handwritten letter. Beneath it lay several leather-bound journals, rolled blueprints, a brass keyring, and a small wooden box. He unfolded the letter first. My dear Lucas, if you're reading this, then life has probably been far more unfair than you deserved. He smiled sadly. Grandpa Charles always understood people better than they understood themselves. The letter continued. Don't waste your strength being angry over what others took. Focus on what they never knew existed. Lucas looked around the hidden room. Every shelf had been meticulously organized. Each journal carried dates spanning more than 40 years. The wooden box contained dozens of old photographs. Grandpa stood beside unfamiliar craftsmen, architects, engineers, builders, people Lucas had never met. He opened the first journal. It wasn't a diary. It was a record of restoration projects. Every abandoned building Grandpa helped save. Every struggling craftsman he quietly mentored. Every family business he helped rebuild. Then Lucas noticed something unexpected. Nearly every project ended with the same sentence. A share was returned to the workshop trust. Curious, he searched the document cases. Inside were partnership agreements, small ownership certificates, business contracts. Instead of charging struggling tradespeople for his help, Grandpa had accepted tiny ownership interests in their companies. Cabinet makers, stone masons, roofing businesses, historic restoration firms, window makers, furniture workshops. At the time, those small shares were worth almost nothing. Over decades, many became thriving companies. Then Lucas opened another cabinet. Inside were patent registrations, traditional restoration tools Grandpa had improved, custom woodworking systems, structural reinforcement methods, historic preservation techniques licensed throughout the country. The royalties were still active. Lucas slowly sat down. Grandpa hadn't hidden money. He had hidden decades of patient investment. Then he noticed another door hidden behind the tallest bookshelf. Unlike the brick wall, this door wasn't concealed. Its brass plaque simply read, "The Workshop." Lucas unlocked it with the keyring. The room beyond stole his breath. An enormous underground restoration studio stretched beneath the entire property. Professional woodworking machinery, stone carting stations, blacksmith equipment, furniture restoration benches, glass restoration tools. Every trade required to restore historic buildings existed under one roof. It looked ready for work. At the center stood Grandpa's favorite drafting table. An old computer rested beside it. A flash drive carried one handwritten label. Final lesson. Lucas pressed play. The screen flickered. Grandpa Charles appeared. Older, gray-haired, still wearing his faded canvas workshop apron. "Hello, Lucas." The familiar voice immediately filled the room with warmth. "If you're watching this, then you found the room." Lucas laughed quietly. "You always knew I would." Grandpa smiled. "I never cared whether you inherited the family estate." Lucas frowned. "What mattered was whether you inherited the family values." He slowly walked through the underground workshop. When families argue over land, they usually forget something. He picked up an old hand plane. The greatest inheritance was never property. It was the ability to build. Photographs appeared across the screen. Young apprentices learning carpentry. Families restoring old homes. Veterans rebuilding furniture. Teenagers discovering skilled trades. Grandpa had quietly taught hundreds of people over the years. "I never measured wealth by what I owned. I measured it by how many people could stand on their own because someone believed in them." His expression softened. If the investments inside these files make you financially secure, good. But promise me something. Never lock these workshop doors. Someone out there needs exactly what you almost lost. The recording ended. Lucas remained completely still, not because of the money, because he finally understood why Grandpa never fought over possessions. He spent his life building people instead. Over the following months, attorneys verified every document, every partnership agreement, every royalty contract, every ownership share. Everything proved authentic. Grandpa's careful investments across dozens of restoration businesses had quietly grown into an extraordinary portfolio worth many millions. The royalties alone guaranteed lifelong financial security. The family eventually learned the truth. Several relatives requested meetings. Others apologized for the estate battle. A few even asked whether Grandpa had left anything else behind. Lucas treated everyone politely. He carried no bitterness. The argument over the estate suddenly seemed very small compared to everything Grandpa had actually built. Instead of selling the businesses or patents, Lucas restored the ruined house completely. The hidden underground workshop reopened exactly as Grandpa intended. Young adults aging out of foster care, veterans learning new trades, people rebuilding their lives after hardship. Everyone could learn carpentry, masonry, furniture restoration, historic preservation, and business management completely free. Local master craftsmen volunteered as instructors. Graduates restored abandoned homes throughout the region. Neighborhoods once filled with neglected buildings slowly came back to life. The old house that everyone wanted demolished became the center of an entire community's renewal. 10 years later, journalists regularly visited the property. One afternoon, a television reporter stood beside the famous brick wall. "So, this is the wall that changed your life?" Lucas smiled. In a way. What exactly was hidden behind it? The reporter expected diamonds, gold bars, stacks of cash. Instead, Lucas opened the concealed entrance. Inside, apprentices carefully restored antique doors, handcrafted furniture, stained glass windows, and historic woodwork. The enormous workshop buzzed with quiet purpose. Lucas looked proudly around the room. The wall wasn't hiding treasure. It was protecting opportunity. The reporter lowered her microphone. "I've interviewed lottery winners. I've interviewed business founders. I've never heard anyone answer that way." Lucas gently unfolded Grandpa's old carpenter's rule. The tiny steel key still rested inside. "My grandfather used to tell me something." "What was that?" "He said anyone can inherit property." The reporter waited. "But only builders know how to create something that lasts longer than ownership." Outside, evening sunlight illuminated the beautifully restored home. Children laughed while families admired the gardens. Students carried handcrafted furniture into waiting trucks. The once abandoned house stood stronger than ever, exactly as Grandpa Charles imagined. Because behind that hidden brick wall wasn't simply a fortune worth millions. It was a lifetime of knowledge, generosity, and patient investment in ordinary people. And in the end, that became the only inheritance powerful enough to survive every argument, every lawsuit, every lost estate, and every generation that followed.